For years, women disappeared from Vancouver's downtown Eastside. They were reported missing. They were dismissed. They were forgotten. Miles away, on a remote pig farm, a man lived quietly. While one of the largest serial murder investigations in Canadian history was slowly taking shape beneath the ground. This is the case of Robert Pickton, and even after his conviction, many believe the full truth was never uncovered. Robert William Pickton was a pig farmer in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. He lived on a deteriorating farm he shared with his brother David. The property was known locally as a place of wild parties, illegal gatherings, and strange activity, yet authorities rarely intervened. To neighbors, Pickton appeared socially awkward, quiet, and unremarkable. But to investigators later on, he was hiding in plain sight. He wasn't the kind of person who stood out in a crowd. He mumbled, often seemed distant, and blended into the background of his own chaotic property. This unassuming demeanor allowed him to operate without raising serious alarm, even as whispers and rumors circulated about what was really happening on that farm. Throughout the 1990s, women, many from vulnerable backgrounds, began vanishing from Vancouver's downtown East Side. This area, known for its struggles with poverty and addiction, was a place where people could easily fall through the cracks. Families reported their loved ones missing. Community members and advocates raised alarms, pointing to a frightening pattern. But the police response was slow, fragmented, and often dismissive. The victims were frequently stereotyped, and their cases weren't given the urgency they deserved. Years passed. The list of missing women grew longer and longer. No pattern was officially acknowledged by law enforcement until the number of disappearances became so overwhelming that it was impossible to ignore. A crisis that had been simmering for years was finally about to boil over. Pickton's farm was isolated, overgrown, poorly maintained. It was a sprawling, messy property, cluttered with junk, dilapidated buildings, and mud. It was a place few outsiders would ever want to investigate. Despite repeated tips and complaints from various sources over the years, the property managed to avoid serious scrutiny. There were calls about illegal firearms, about the rowdy parties, even whispers of more sinister activities. Yet, somehow, the farm remained largely untouched by law enforcement. Only later would investigators realize that the answers they were searching for, the secrets behind the disappearances of dozens of women, may have been buried there, hidden in plain sight, all along. The farm was not just a home. It was a fortress of filth and neglect that shielded its dark secrets from the outside world. In 2002, the case finally broke open, but almost by accident. Police executed a search warrant on the Pickton farm, but it was initially for illegal firearms, unrelated to the missing women. What they found, however, changed everything. During that search, an officer spotted personal belongings that seemed out of place, items like an asthma inhaler prescribed to one of the missing women. This single discovery was the domino that set off a massive chain reaction. Investigators secured the property and began what would become one of the largest and most complex forensic operations in Canadian history. They found more personal items tied to other missing women. They uncovered biological evidence. Signs of horrific crimes were everywhere, indicating the farm had been used to conceal unspeakable acts over a very long period. The search of that property would take years. Robert Pickton was arrested and charged. The evidence mounting against him was staggering. During his time in custody, police placed an undercover officer in his cell, posing as an inmate. In conversations with this officer, Pickton allegedly made a series of chilling statements. He reportedly bragged about killing many women, claiming the total was 49, and that he was disappointed he didn't get to make it in even 50. These alleged confession claims were a cornerstone of the prosecution's case. Ultimately, Pickton was tried and convicted on 6 counts of second-degree murder, with prosecutors staying another 20 charges. But even with those convictions, many people, including the victims' families and investigators, believe that this represents only a small fraction of the full, horrifying story. The following includes claims and allegations that have been widely reported, but were not all proven in a court of law. Over the years, survivors, informants, and even some investigators have raised deeply disturbing questions that linger over the case. Were other individuals involved? Did people attend parties on the farm fully aware that heinous crimes were occurring? Were explicit warnings about Pickton intentionally ignored by authorities? Some witnesses have claimed that the farm hosted large, wild events where illegal activity was openly visible, and that some attendees were powerful people. Others have alleged that Pickton did not act entirely alone, suggesting he had help, though no co-conspirators were ever convicted. And then there are the persistent rumors that evidence may have been lost, destroyed, or overlooked during the chaotic, years-long investigation. These unproven claims continue to fuel public distrust and a fierce debate over what really happened. A formal public inquiry later concluded that systemic failures by police allowed the murders to continue for years. The report was scathing. It detailed how warnings were missed, reports from credible sources were dismissed, and the investigations were plagued by bias against the victims. Lives were lost that could have been saved. Families of the victims have stated, time and time again, that earlier competent action by the police could have prevented many of the deaths. The most haunting echo of this failure comes from Pickton himself. He reportedly claimed that he got sloppy and that the police could have, and should have, caught him much sooner. That statement alone continues to haunt the case, serving as a brutal reminder of the opportunities that were tragically missed. Despite the convictions and the lengthy investigation, critical questions remain. How many victims were there in total? Were there bodies and remains on that farm that were never identified? Was the full, horrifying scale of the crimes ever truly uncovered? And perhaps the most painful question of all, did systemic, institutional failures allow a serial killer to operate with impunity for well over a decade? For the families of the victims, and for the public, these are not abstract questions. They represent a search for truth and accountability that feels far from over. For many, the case of Robert Pickton is not closed. It is a deeply unresolved wound in the nation's history. Will the families ever receive the full answers they deserve? Robert Pickton is serving a life sentence with no possibility of parole for 25 years. But justice is not measured only by convictions or prison sentences. Sometimes, it is measured by the questions that remain unanswered, and by the lessons we must learn from our failures. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe for more deep dives into complex cases.